Marcus Webb had seen enough of the galaxy to know when trouble was brewing. The crowded marketplace of Zephyr Prime's capital buzzed with an undercurrent of tension that made his hand drift instinctively toward the energy weapon at his hip. 3 months since the peace treaty, and still the air crackled with mistrust between humans and Zephyrians. "Stay alert, Ghost," he murmured to his companion, a sleek silver wolf-like creature native to his home colony. The animal's ears twitched, intelligent amber eyes scanning the throngs of tall, elegant aliens that parted before them like water around a stone. Marcus adjusted the collar of his midnight blue diplomatic uniform, the fabric designed to blend formal protocol with the practicality of hidden armor. As a security escort for the human embassy, his job was supposed to be simple: ensure safe passage for diplomatic personnel through the market district. What he hadn't signed up for was babysitting. "Excuse me, human sir." The voice was soft, melodic, and utterly unexpected. Marcus stopped mid-stride and looked down to see 3 small Zephyrian girls standing before him. Their skin held the characteristic pale lavender hue of their species, marked with intricate silver patterns that seemed to shimmer in the alien sunlight. Elaborate braids adorned with precious gems indicated high nobility, yet their simple white dresses were torn and stained. "We are lost," announced the tallest of the 3, who couldn't have been more than 12 by human standards. Her violet eyes held a composure that seemed far too mature for her apparent age. "Our transport malfunctioned near the outer markets, and we cannot find our way back to the palace district." Marcus glanced around the crowded marketplace. This was the industrial sector, miles from the pristine palace quarter where Zephyrian royalty resided. These children were definitely out of their element and in potential danger from anti-human extremists who wouldn't hesitate to use royal hostages as leverage. "Where's your escort?" he asked, his voice rougher than intended after years of military service. "Captain Vex became separated from us when a crowd of protesters blocked the main thoroughfare," explained the middle child, her voice trembling. "Slightly. We tried to follow the safe routes we'd memorized, but everything looks different from ground level." The youngest, who appeared to be around 8, stepped closer to Ghost. The silver wolf remained perfectly still as tiny fingers stroked his fur. "Your companion is beautiful," she whispered in wonder. "Is he a guardian spirit like in the old stories?" Despite his better judgment, Marcus felt his expression soften. "He's called Ghost, and he's just a wolf from my own world." He paused, studying their faces. These weren't ordinary children. Their bearing, their speech patterns, even the way other Zephyrians gave them a wide berth spoke of royal blood. "What are your names?" "I am Princess Nira," said the eldest, offering a formal curtsy. "These are my sisters, Princess Kira and Princess Zara." Marcus felt his blood chill. The daughters of Queen Seraphina herself, the formidable ruler who had negotiated the peace treaty that ended 15 years of devastating war. If anything happened to them while under his unofficial protection, it could shatter the fragile alliance between their species. "Well, your highnesses," he said, offering a respectful bow. "I'm Marcus Webb, security escort with the human embassy. I'll get you home safely." The journey back should have taken 30 minutes. Instead, it stretched into hours as they navigated around blocked streets and avoided areas where anti-integration protests had turned ugly. The princesses walked beside him without complaint, occasionally reaching out to pet Ghost, who had appointed himself their protector with typical canine devotion. "Why did you help us?" Princess Nira asked as they paused in the shade of a towering crystal formation. "Many humans still harbor resentment toward our people." Marcus considered the question seriously. "Because you're children who needed help. It's that simple." Princess Kira studied him with curious eyes. "Humans are warmer than we are," she observed, moving closer to his side. "Is that why your species is so passionate?" "Mother says human emotions ran much hotter than ours. Before Marcus could formulate an appropriate diplomatic response, the distinctive whine of royal hovercraft engines echoed overhead. 3 sleek vessels descended toward them, their polished hulls reflecting the late afternoon sun like mirrors. Mother, Princess Zara breathed, a mixture of relief and apprehension crossing her delicate features. The lead craft touched down with barely a whisper, and Marcus found himself instinctively moving to shield the princesses as armed guards poured out. Their ceremonial armor gleamed silver and white, energy weapons primed but not yet aimed. Finally, a figure emerged that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. Queen Seraphina stood nearly 7 feet tall, her presence commanding even without the elaborate crown adorning her silver hair. Her skin bore more intricate patterns than her daughter's, marking her as not just royalty, but a warrior queen who had earned her position through both bloodline and battle. Flowing robes of deep purple accentuated her regal bearing, yet Marcus caught glimpses of armor beneath. This was no pampered monarch. Her eyes, a startling shade of crystalline blue, fixed on him with an intensity that made his military training scream warnings. This was someone accustomed to being obeyed without question, someone who had commanded fleets in battle and negotiated the fate of worlds. "Human," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality of her species, but underscored with authority that brooked no argument. "You have something that belongs to me, Mother." All 3 princesses rushed forward, surrounding their imposing parent with excited chatter about their adventure. Yet even as she embraced them, Queen Seraphine's gaze never left Marcus. "Your Majesty," he said, offering his most formal military bow. "Marcus Webb, Human Embassy Security. Your daughters were in the industrial district when I found them. I was simply ensuring their safe return." "Simply?" One elegant eyebrow arched. "You abandoned your official duties to escort 3 Zephyrian children across half the city. That seems far from simple, Mr. Webb." Marcus straightened, meeting her challenging gaze. "They were children in danger, Your Majesty. Their species was irrelevant." A tense silence fell as royal guards shifted nervously. Speaking so directly to the queen was unprecedented, especially for a human. Ghost pressed against Marcus's leg, sensing the tension. To everyone's surprise, Queen Seraphina smiled a genuine expression that transformed her stern features into something breathtakingly beautiful. "You have courage, Mr. Webb. Few dare speak so plainly to me." She gestured toward her daughters, who had moved to stand protectively near Marcus and Ghost. "And fewer still earn such loyalty from my children. They are excellent judges of character." Princess Nera stepped forward boldly. "Mother, Mr. Webb and Ghost protected us when we were frightened and lost. He's kind and brave, just like the heroes in the old stories." "He let us pet Ghost," Princess Zara added helpfully. "And he didn't get angry when we asked lots of questions." Queen Seraphina studied the scene before her. Her 3 daughters clustered around, a human who had risked diplomatic incident to ensure their safety, a silver wolf sitting patiently as royal hands stroked his fur, and Marcus himself standing, at attention despite the obvious exhaustion in his shoulders. "It grows late," she observed, noting how the alien sun cast long shadows across the marketplace. "And you appear to have had quite an adventure. Mr. Webb, I believe my daughters have imposed enough upon your time." As the royal party prepared to depart, Princess Kira tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Will we see you again?" she asked hopefully. Marcus knelt to her level, his expression gentle. "I don't know, Princess, but I'm glad I could help today." The 3 girls exchanged meaningful glances before Princess Nera spoke up with the authority of her future crown. "Mother, surely Mr. Webb and Ghost deserve proper thanks for their service. Perhaps they could join us for evening meal at the palace?" Queen Seraphine's eyes sparkled with something that might have been amusement. "An interesting suggestion, Nera. Mr. Webb, would you honor us with your presence? I find myself curious about the human who earned such devotion from my daughters in a single afternoon. Marcus felt the weight of history in that moment. This wasn't just a dinner invitation. It was an unprecedented gesture that could reshape human Zephyrian relations. Yet as he looked into Queen Seraphine's brilliant blue eyes, he found himself thinking less about politics and more about the intriguing woman behind the crown. "The honor would be mine, Your Majesty," he said, sealing both their fates with those simple words. The Zephyrian royal palace exceeded every description Marcus had ever heard. Crystalline spires twisted skyward like frozen music, their surfaces refracting the twin moons' light into cascading rainbows that danced across marble walls. As their hovercraft glided through the palace's defensive barriers, Marcus felt distinctly out of place in his simple diplomatic uniform. "Magnificent, isn't it?" Queen Seraphina observed, noting his expression as they disembarked. "The palace has stood for 3,000 years, built when our people first mastered the art of singing crystal into shape." "Singing crystal?" Marcus asked, genuinely intrigued despite his nervousness. Princess Zara bounced excitedly beside him. "Show him, Mother, please." The queen hesitated, then approached one of the towering crystal formations lining the courtyard. She placed her palm against its surface and began to hum a haunting melody that seemed to resonate from deep within her chest. The crystal responded, its internal structure shifting and flowing like liquid light, reshaping itself into an intricate flowering vine before returning to its original form. "Our ancestors discovered that certain frequencies could manipulate crystalline matrices," Queen Seraphina explained, noting Marcus's amazed expression. "It's how we built our cities, our ships, even our weapons during the war." "That's incredible," Marcus breathed. "Humans use crude tools and brute force. Your people create through harmony." Something flickered in the queen's eyes' surprise. Perhaps at his appreciation, rather than the fear or envy most humans displayed when witnessing Zephyrian abilities. Their entrance into the palace proper drew stares from dozens of courtiers and servants. The sight of a human walking beside the royal family was unprecedented, and Marcus felt the weight of curious gazes following their procession through corridors, lined with living murals that shifted and changed like slow-motion dances. "The dining hall is through here," Princess Nira announced, taking Marcus's hand to guide him forward. Her small fingers were cool against his skin, and he noticed how all three princesses seemed drawn to his warmth. The royal dining hall stretched the length of a starship hangar, its vaulted ceiling supported by columns of singing crystal that hummed with soft melodies. A table of polished white stone dominated the center, surrounded by chairs that looked more like thrones carved from single gems. "Usually we dine in the smaller family hall," Queen Seraphina mentioned as they took their seats. "But I thought you might appreciate seeing one of our more impressive spaces." Marcus found himself seated to the queen's right, with Ghost lying contentedly beside his chair while the three princesses arranged themselves across from them. Servants began bringing courses, each dish more exotic than the last, though Marcus was relieved to find that Zephyrian cuisine included foods humans could digest. "Tell me about your home world, Mr. Webb," the queen requested as they began eating. "My daughters seem quite taken with Ghost, which suggests your planet has interesting wildlife." "Colony World Meridian," Marcus replied, carefully navigating the delicate Zephyrian eating utensils. "It's a frontier world, mostly agricultural settlements and mining operations. Ghost species evolved there. They're pack hunters, but incredibly intelligent. This one bonded with me when I was stationed there as a pilot." "A pilot?" Princess Kira perked up with interest. "What kind of ships did you fly?" Marcus glanced at Queen Seraphina, uncertain how much military detail was appropriate dinner conversation with former enemies. She nodded almost imperceptibly. "Reconnaissance. Fighters mostly," he said carefully. Fast, lightly armed vessels designed for information gathering rather than heavy combat. Is that how you learned to think tactically? The Queen asked, her tone casual, but her eyes sharp with intelligence. Your decision to avoid the main thoroughfares and take my daughters through the service districts showed excellent strategic thinking. Marcus felt heat rise to his face. I just tried to keep them away from crowds and potential trouble spots, Your Majesty. Nothing special about it. Nothing special? Queen Seraphine's lips curved in a slight smile. Mr. Webb, in the past month alone, 3 separate groups of human diplomats have become lost in our capital and required rescue by our security forces. Yet you navigated unfamiliar territory while protecting 3 children you'd never met. I find that quite special indeed. The meal continued with lighter conversation, the princesses eagerly describing their lessons in art, music, and statcraft, while Marcus shared stories of his travels across human space. He found himself relaxing despite the formal setting, drawn in by the Queen's genuine interest in human culture and her daughter's infectious enthusiasm. Mother, Princess Nira said during a lull in conversation, Mr. Webb should stay at the palace tonight. It's too late for him to return safely to the embassy district. Queen Seraphina raised an eyebrow at her eldest daughter's boldness, but Marcus caught a glimmer of amusement in her crystalline eyes. That would be highly irregular. Nira, Mr. Webb has his own quarters at the embassy. But the transport systems shut down after midnight, Princess Kira added helpfully. And there have been protests in the commercial district. It could be dangerous. Marcus started to protest that he could handle himself, but Princess Zara delivered. The killing blow. Please, Mother? Ghost likes it here, and we promise to show him the Crystal Gardens tomorrow. The Queen looked from her daughters to Marcus, clearly recognizing the coordinated campaign. It seems my daughters have developed quite an attachment to both of you, she observed. Very well. Mr. Webb, if you're comfortable with the arrangement, guest quarters can be prepared. That's very generous, Your Majesty, but I wouldn't want to impose nonsense, she interrupted, rising gracefully from her chair. You've done my family a great service today. The least I can offer is a comfortable night's rest. She paused, studying his face with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. Besides, I find myself curious about human customs. Perhaps you could join me for morning tea and share some observations about the differences between our species? The invitation was casual, but something in her tone made it feel deeply personal. Marcus nodded, not trusting his voice to remain steady. An hour later, after the princesses had reluctantly bid good night to both Marcus and Ghost, a silent servant led them to quarters that rivaled anything Marcus had seen in the finest human hotels. The bedroom featured a bed large enough for 3 people, walls that displayed slowly shifting starscapes, and a balcony overlooking the crystal gardens the princesses had mentioned. Marcus had just begun to settle in when a soft knock came at his door. Opening it revealed all 3 princesses in their nightgowns, looking up at him with pleading expressions. We can't sleep, Princess Nira announced. The palace feels different tonight, and we're having strange dreams about today's adventure. Could we possibly ... double quotes, Princess Kira began hesitantly. Stay with you and Ghost? Princess Zara finished hopefully. Just until we fall asleep? You make us feel safe. Marcus glanced down the empty corridor, then back at 3 pairs of violet eyes. That reminded him painfully of his own younger sister, lost in the war years ago. I suppose it would be all right, he said quietly. But just until you're asleep, then back to your own rooms. Your mother would have my head if she found out. The princesses exchanged triumphant glances and hurried into his quarters. They arranged themselves around Ghost on a large bed, chattering softly about the day's events and asking endless questions about human customs and Ghost's homeworld. Marcus settled into a comfortable chair nearby, intending to keep watch until they fell asleep. But the stress of the day, combined with the soothing sound of their gentle voices, gradually overwhelmed him. His eyelids grew heavy, and despite his best intentions, he dozed off. He woke hours later to find himself no longer in the chair. Somehow, during the night, he'd migrated to the bed, and all three princesses had curled up against him like sleeping kittens seeking warmth. Princess Nira was tucked against his left side, while Princess Kira and Zara shared space on his right, their small arms draped across his chest. Ghost lay at the foot of the bed, serving as a furry guardian. Marcus lay perfectly still, acutely aware that being found in this position with the royal daughters would create a diplomatic incident of epic proportions. He needed to wake them gently and get them back to their rooms before anyone. Well, came a familiar melodious voice from the doorway. This is certainly not what I expected to find. Marcus's blood turned to ice as Queen Seraphina stepped into the room, her crystalline eyes taking in the scene with an expression he couldn't read. She was dressed in a simple robe that somehow made her appear even more beautiful than her formal regalia, her silver hair flowing loose around her shoulders. "Your Majesty," he began carefully. "I can explain? Can you?" she asked, moving closer to the bed. Her voice held no anger, only curiosity. "My daughters sought you out in the middle of the night, arranged themselves around you like nestlings seeking warmth from their parent, and you allowed it. Most humans would have sent them away immediately." Marcus swallowed hard. "They said they couldn't sleep, that they were having strange dreams about today. I only meant to stay until they fell asleep, but I must have dozed off myself." Queen Seraphina studied his face intently, then looked at her sleeping daughters. Something in her expression softened. "They've never done this before," she said quietly. "Even with me, they maintain some distance while sleeping. Zephyrian children typically prefer solitude at night. I'm sorry if I overstepped. You misunderstand me, Mr. Webb." The Queen sat carefully on the edge of the bed, her proximity making Marcus acutely aware of her exotic scent, something like vanilla mixed with ozone. "My daughters lost their father in the final year of the war. Since then, they've been cautious around male figures, even trusted advisors. Yet they sought comfort from you, a human they met mere hours ago." She reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from Princess Zara's sleeping face. "It tells me something important about your character, something that makes me want to extend an unusual offer." Marcus carefully extracted himself from the sleeping princesses, moving to stand before their mother. "What kind of offer, Your Majesty?" Queen Seraphina rose as well, bringing them face to face in the moonlight streaming through the balcony windows. "I want you to stay, Mr. Webb, not just for tonight, but permanently, as my daughter's personal guardian and cultural liaison. I'm honored, but I'm not qualified." "You're exactly qualified," she interrupted, her voice growing more passionate. "You have military training, tactical thinking, and most importantly, you've earned their trust. My daughters need someone who understands both duty and compassion, someone who would risk diplomatic consequences to protect children who aren't even his own species." Marcus stared at her, searching for the catch. "And in exchange?" Queen Seraphina stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the coolness of her skin in contrast to his human warmth. "In exchange, you would live here in the palace with access to privileges reserved for the highest nobility. You would be my daughter's protector, my advisor on human affairs, and—" She paused, her crystalline eyes meeting his. "Perhaps something more, if we both prove worthy of it." The invitation hung in the air between them, loaded with possibilities that could reshape both their worlds. Behind them, the three princesses slept peacefully, unknowing architects of a bond that was growing stronger with each shared glance. "I accept," Marcus said quietly, sealing his fate and theirs with those 2 simple words. 2 weeks had passed since Marcus accepted Queen Seraphon's offer, and palace life had settled into a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. Each morning began with combat training in the Crystal Gardens, where Seraphina insisted on teaching him Zephyrian fighting techniques while he shared human military tactics in return. "Your people rely too heavily on brute force," she observed, circling him in the practice arena as dawn light filtered through the translucent training dome. Today she wore form-fitting exercise attire that left little to imagination, and Marcus found concentration increasingly difficult. "Maybe," he replied, attempting the flowing defensive stance she'd shown him, "but sometimes brute force gets the job done when finesse fails." Seraphina smiled, moving closer to adjust his posture. Her hands were cool against his heated skin as she repositioned his arms. "There's wisdom in that approach," she admitted, her fingers lingering perhaps longer than necessary on his forearm. "Though I suspect you're more capable of finesse than you realize." Their sparring sessions had become the highlight of Marcus's days, not just for the physical challenge, but for these moments of intimacy disguised as instruction. Every correction of his stance, every demonstration of technique, brought them closer together in ways that had nothing to do with combat. "Guardian Marcus." Princess Zara's voice rang across the garden as all three daughters burst into the training area, followed by their long-suffering tutor, Master Finn. "I apologize, Your Majesty," the elderly Zephyrian said, bowing deeply to Seraphina. The princesses insisted on interrupting their mathematics lesson to observe combat training. "We want to learn too," Princess Nira declared, moving to stand beside Marcus with determined expression. "If Guardian Marcus is going to protect us, shouldn't we know how to protect ourselves?" Marcus glanced at Seraphina, who was struggling to hide her amusement. "It's not a bad idea, Your Majesty. Basic self-defense could be valuable." "Very well," the Queen conceded. "But mathematics lessons will continue afterward. Master Finn, please stay to observe." What followed was chaos disguised as instruction. The princesses threw themselves into learning with typical royal determination, though their techniques needed considerable work. Princess Kira had natural balance but lacked focus. Princess Zara possessed surprising strength but no patience, and Princess Nira tried to command the lesson like a military drill. "No, like this." Marcus demonstrated a basic blocking technique, moving behind Princess Nira to guide her arms through the proper motion. "Feel the momentum. Don't fight against it." "Is this how human fathers teach their children?" Princess Nira asked, leaning back against his chest with casual affection that made his heart clench. Marcus caught Seraphina watching them with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. "I wouldn't know," he said softly. "I never had children of my own." "Why not?" Princess Kira piped up with the bluntness only children could manage. "You would make an excellent father. You're patient and strong, and you smell good. I smell good." Marcus laughed despite himself. "Humans have a distinctive scent," Seraphina explained, her cheeks taking on a faintly purple tinge that might have been a Zephyrian blush. "It's not unpleasant." Their eyes met across the training ground, and something electric passed between them. The moment stretched until Princess Zara broke it by attempting an ambitious kick that sent her tumbling into Ghost, who had been napping peacefully in a patch of sunlight dot later that afternoon. As the princesses attended their regular lessons, Marcus found himself summoned to King Seraphin's private study. The room was smaller than he'd expected, lined with books and star charts rather than the formal regalia of state. Seraphina stood by the window overlooking the capital city, still wearing her training attire. "You've been here 2 weeks," she said without preamble. "How are you finding palace life?" Marcus approached carefully, stopping a respectable distance. Behind her, different than I expected, more domestic than I imagined royal life would be. "Is that disappointing?" "No," he said honestly. "It's better." Your daughters are remarkable, Your Majesty. They're intelligent, curious, and far braver than they should be at their age. Seraphina turned to face him, her expression serious. They adore you. In 2 weeks, you've become more important to them than advisors they've known their entire lives. She paused, studying his face. That concerns some members of my court. Am I causing problems? Prince Darien, my brother, believes I'm making a mistake trusting a human so completely, she admitted. He thinks you're a spy or worse, that you're manipulating my daughters to gain influence over me. Marcus felt his stomach drop. And what do you think? Instead of answering immediately, Seraphina stepped closer, close enough that he could see the complex silver patterns etched into her skin, close enough to feel the coolness radiating from her body, in contrast to his human warmth. I think, she said quietly, that if you were trying to manipulate me, you're doing it very effectively. The admission hung between them like a challenge. Marcus swallowed hard, acutely aware of her proximity, of the way her crystalline eyes seemed to see straight through him. Your Majesty, I would never— I know, she interrupted, reaching up to place her palm against his cheek. Her touch was electric, sending shivers down his spine. That's what makes it so dangerous. Before either could say more, urgent chimes echoed through the palace communication system. Seraphina stepped back immediately, her expression shifting to alert concern as her personal communicator activated. Your Majesty, came the voice of Captain Reyes, head of the Royal Guard. Emergency in the East Wing. Armed intruders have breached the outer perimeter near the princess's quarters. On my way, Seraphina replied crisply, already moving toward her weapons cabinet. Marcus, with me. This could be connected to the anti-integration extremists. They ran through the palace corridors, Marcus keeping pace with Seraphine's longer stride, while Ghost bounded ahead of them. The sound of energy weapons discharging echoed from the direction of the princess's wing, punctuated by shouts and the distinctive hum of Zephyrian crystal weapons. They rounded the final corner to find chaos. Royal guards had formed a defensive perimeter around the princess's study hall, where smoke poured from shattered windows. Through the gaps, Marcus could see figures in black, tactical gear advancing on positions where the 3 girls huddled behind overturned furniture with Master Finn. 6 hostiles, Captain Reyes reported as they arrived. They bypassed our outer sensors using some kind of stealth technology. My guards are pinned down. The attackers have superior firepower and position. Without hesitation, Marcus vaulted over the defensive barricade. Cover me, he called back to Seraphina, who had produced a crystalline weapon that hummed with deadly energy. What followed was the longest 30 seconds of Marcus's life. He rolled through the doorway as energy bolts scorched the air around him, coming up behind an overturned table where Princess Nera was protecting her younger sisters with fierce determination. Guardian Marcus, she cried with relief. Stay down, he ordered, then moved with the fluid precision his military training had drilled into him. The attackers were focused on the royal guards at the main entrance, giving Marcus the element of surprise he needed. The first hostile went down from a precisely thrown crystal shard technique Seraphina had taught him just that morning. The second fell to a combination of human combat techniques and Zephyrian agility that left the remaining attackers confused and off-balance. By the time Queen Seraphina and her guards breached the room, Marcus had neutralized 4 of the 6 intruders, while the royal guards handled the remaining 2. He stood protectively over the 3 princesses, breathing hard but uninjured. Is everyone all right? Seraphina demanded, her weapon still humming with lethal energy as she surveyed the scene. We're fine, Mother, Princess Nera reported with remarkable composure. Guardian Marcus protected us. He was amazing, Princess, Kira added admiringly. He moved like water and struck like lightning, just like in your stories about ancient warriors. As the immediate crisis passed and the intruders were taken into custody, Marcus found himself alone with Serafina in the Asiya. Damage study. The princesses had been escorted to secure quarters, and repair crews were already beginning to restore the crystal windows. "You risked your life for them," Serafina said quietly, approaching him with an expression he'd never seen before. "Of course I did. They're under my protection." "No," she shook her head, reaching up to touch a small cut on his forehead where crystal shrapnel had grazed him. "It was more than duty. You love them." Marcus caught her hand, holding it against his face as he looked into her crystalline eyes. "Yes, I do. And I love their mother, too." The confession escaped before he could stop it, raw and honest in the yasti. Aftermath of violence and fear. Seraphine's breath caught, her eyes widening with surprise and something deeper. "Marcus," she whispered, and suddenly the space between them disappeared. Their kiss was inevitable, born from shared danger and weeks of growing attraction. Her lips were cooler than human standard, but soft beyond imagination, and she tasted like starlight and promises. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing unsteadily. "This changes everything," Serafina murmured against his lips. "I know," Marcus replied, his forehead touching hers. "Are you ready for everything to change?" Her answer was another kiss, deeper and more passionate than the first, sealing their fate beneath the light of alien stars that would witness the birth of a love that could unite two worlds.